How did the entire world ever agree to accept American leadership after Hiroshima, after Vietnam, after Iraq, after Afghanistan? I mean, go further back. How did anyone accept your so-called moral leadership after you were responsible for inventing the lie that Africans, who were literally the first human beings on this planet, you invented the lie that they were subhuman and eligible for chattel slavery. And after entire nations, indigenous people were wiped out in North America. How did anyone ever take you seriously as moral actors? Truly, you're demented. Your history shows you're demented. Future historians are going to ask, future academics are going to ask, why did countries keep using a currency that was controlled by a nation that was running permanent trade deficits and printing money just to finance wars? Why did we use their currency? What made populations so vulnerable to such obvious manipulation? Why did the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank maintain any sort of legitimacy when they so clearly served Western interests exclusively? And the answers are going to be studied in the same way that we now study totalitarian propaganda. The sophistication of Western narrative control, I think, is probably going to end up being taught as the definitive case study in mass psychological manipulation and institutionally imposed mass psychosis. And yes, there's going to be some embarrassment. We're going to feel embarrassed. Abuse victims often do feel embarrassed. It's going to be multifaceted and multi-generational embarrassment, political embarrassment. How did our leaders ever agree to sign agreements and deals that were so obviously against their own interests and the interests of their own people? You know? And how did the most resource-rich countries on earth become the poorest? How does this happen? Why did our universities ever teach their theories as universal truths? You know? How do we let them define the categories of our own thinking? You know, especially when their own actions demonstrated that they themselves flagrantly disbelieved in their own declared theories and their own declared principles. Why were we teaching it like we were supposed to believe it when they don't even believe it and they came up with it? Why did we see their culture as sophisticated and see our culture as limited or provincial or even backwards? Why did we structure our economies to supply them with raw minerals, raw materials and resources? Why did we accept to provide cheap labor to a purely exploitative economy, an economic model? Why do we keep them afloat like that? And the deepest embarrassment that maybe is going to take the longest to process is the psychological embarrassment. How did we ever convince ourselves that they meant a single word that they ever said? How did we keep believing despite pattern after pattern after pattern proving otherwise?